Morning. I'm Mary Jo Ebert. This is Eileen Benenson. We co-chair the Service and Justice program here at BUC. And we're happy to see you here this morning as we think about the things that we love most about this church. With what is sort of our mission statement for our program, and it's stated there in your packet as well and up here, BUC is called to minister to the needs of our communities, to promote social, economic, and environmental justice, and to be an agent of systemic social change. That covers a lot of ground. But I'd like to start with my own experience at BUC and how that segues into social justice. I first heard about BUC from a good friend of mine who was telling me about the fact that her kids were in the religious education program at a church that was teaching them about different religions. And that immediately piqued my interest. I thought, wow, a church that teaches its students, its youth, about different religions, that's something I'd really like to be part of. So I started attending here, and of course my initial experiences were in the worship service. Worship service is much like the one we just had, where I wanted to shout at the end of that song today, didn't you? The choir got done, I wanted to just shout. And then we went into a more meditative period where I could soak in the message of the day, and I could soak up more of that good music and really think about what the messages that I could take with me out into the next week. And as I started to get more involved here, of course, then I started hearing about all of the service and volunteer opportunities. And after a while, I remember a couple of years later, trying to describe this church to my sister. And I said, it's like this whole smorgasbord of different things that I can choose from all in one place, kind of a one-stop shopping. I can come to this one place, and all of this stuff is available for me to choose from. And even better, as I participate in these different facets of this church life, I'm meeting people who are part of this community. So I might be volunteering for SOS one day, and then I see that person at church on Sunday, and we strike up a conversation. I volunteered in the RE program, met some of the parents. I see those same parents at an activity later in the year at church. And so as I'm partaking of all of the different opportunities that are available here, I'm also building really great relationships with people in a community. And I ask myself, where else can I find that? And I suspect some of you, if you're stopping to think about it, would have that same reaction. So that's what BUC is to me. In terms of the Service and Justice program, I'd like to talk a little bit about the objectives of the program and some of the experiences that we have with that. The first, of course, is to commit our time and talent to community service. In a survey that we conducted last January, 80% of the people who responded to the survey said that they participate in at least one of the service projects that we are involved in here at the church. 80%. And I suspect that holds true pretty much throughout the congregation. Service and justice is often cited as one of the criteria that people are evaluating as they're looking at different churches. We have a long-standing partnership with the Whitmer Human Resource Center Elementary School. That's one of our service projects, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. In August, we were part of something that has been going on at that school for a number of years now, and that is the collection of school supplies. And it happened that I was able to go over to the school that day and help organize school supplies that volunteers like Eileen and other people had scoured all the sales in the area, got all the best buys on the school supplies, brought it together, and then we had to get it all sorted out and set for each student to receive their set of school supplies. Because at this school in Pontiac, most of the kids will show up for school without school supplies. or with a few things but not everything they need. So we were there that day, a good group of workers enjoying the work, got all the school supplies organized, and the teachers came down to our workroom by grade level. And most of them were just thrilled that we had a complete set of school supplies for every student in their class. And one teacher in particular stands out in my mind because she said, "Oh good, now I don't have to go shopping for school supplies for my students this weekend." See, she had already been shopping and had bought some basic, the most important things first, and she was planning that weekend to go and buy the rest for her classroom of 40 students, taking money out of her own pocket. And I really doubt the teachers in a Pontiac elementary school are at the top of the pay scale, but she was taking money out of her pocket. How thrilled she was to learn that an organization like ours and the others that we teamed up with to pull that off are active in the community, that see that need and are responding to that need. I also worked SOS. How many of you have worked SOS Week? In fact, they're set up here today. Last November for SOS, I met one of our guests sometime during the week. It was a young woman with, I think she had 3 children under the age of 5. She had her hands full. And as with all of our guests from SOS, they're unemployed, they're seeking employment, and they're working with the staff at SOS to get connected to jobs. They're also homeless at that point, so they're looking to transition out of that situation into having a home and a job and being able to support themselves. And I remember thinking, gosh, what is she going to do? How can she work? She's got these 3 young kids. Where is she going to get a job? Well, on the last day of that week, that Sunday morning, I drove. I was one of the many volunteers that serve as drivers in the early morning. And I took her and 2 of her kids back to SOS. And she was all excited. She had gotten a job that week. The SOS staff had connected her with a company, and she now had a job at a call center. And they had also connected her with another program in the area that helps with child care as people are getting back on their feet financially. That is not possible without an organization like SOS that commits themselves to people that are in a transition time in their lives. It could happen to any of us. And SOS doesn't work without communities like ours who take a week. Doesn't seem like such a big deal, right? Although it's a lot of work. It's 1 week, but it has a dramatic impact on people's lives. Over the next year or so, if you look at the program focus area, some of the areas that we are trying to focus on is, of course, having a portfolio of projects that BUCers will support, that you're interested in and that resonate with you. One of the areas of feedback that we often get is that it's hard to align your schedule with the work that's available. So that's a constant challenge for us. There are some who say, why don't we just do one major thing and focus on that one thing rather than have a lot of different things? Well, what we find with that is that it doesn't necessarily fit with everybody's schedule or everybody's interests. What really happens, I think our church is typical, is that the service projects that we are committed to, that we run here, have bubbled up out of interest from the congregation. Somebody who says, you know, let's go and do something for an elementary school in Pontiac. Let's go one day in January and do laundry at the St. Mary's Warming Center. We can do that. We have a lot of people that are environmentally conscious and say, well, let's go, can we go plant trees for greening of Detroit? So it comes from the areas of interest from people in the congregation. And I don't think there's any one thing that would meet everybody's interests and your schedules. So that's something that we're constantly evaluating, particularly since a lot of people can't donate their time during the regular work week And while for others, that's the best time for them to donate their time. We're also working on enhancing our communication and publicity in this area, and we'd really like to synchronize our activities with our youth. Over in the RE session, one of the things they're talking about is that they're working on getting more involved in community service projects, and to some degree they would like to have that synchronized with what the adults in the congregation are doing. Going on to the next area then is to expand and foster a social action mindset. Now the distinction I make here is, I've just talked about a variety of service projects that we're involved in. This is the advocacy side, which as I've worked on this over the last couple of years, and I know Eileen can attest to this as well, this is really the harder side. Being able to influence public policy and practices of communities to make for a more just a more just life for everybody in the community. It takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of persistence, figuring out who to contact, who to team up with to make the kind of lasting change that we'd like to make. It can seem impossible, or certainly daunting when you think about, well, how am I going to how can I affect the legislative decision-making process? You know, that seems impossible at times, but you would be surprised what a few determined people can do just by raising your voice, making a call, finding others who share your views on things. I'd like to have a member of our congregation talk a little bit about this from his personal experience, and with that I'll welcome Jeff Plachta to the podium.
Good morning, everybody. So I joined BUC about 6 years ago, and but I'm involved in organizations and community involvement, but one of the big things has been human rights. And in Royal Oak, we have the Human Rights Ordinance that's coming on the ballot to include LGBT in the Human Rights Ordinance in Royal Oak for non-discrimination. And I got involved with the organization, and we're seeking ways to get more people involved. And I said, well, you know, I'm going to bring it up at BUC. And I left Kathy a voicemail, and a couple of days later she called me and said, why don't you come in and we'll meet with Mary Jo. And we thought of some ideas, and Mary Jo said, well, why don't you come in and put up a little table and seek volunteers. So we did that. And so people came from the organization, One Royal Oak, set up a table for volunteers, and we're letting the word out. Well, 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago on Saturday, I was in my office in front of the house, and I heard my doorbell ring, and I was on the phone, and then so my partner's daughter answered the door, and I didn't know what the conversation was about. But then I look across the street and I see Ben Abel, and I'm like, it's the one, it's my church people are knocking on the doors for the One Royal Oak campaign. And it was just, wow, it just came full circle from coming to talk to Kathy and Mary Jo to setting up a booth. And Ben and I didn't know they volunteered. We're actually knocking on the doors in my neighborhood to help break this campaign. And it's just like, it gave me goosebumps. I just ran out the door, and it was just so exciting. So I just think the value of this church is just amazing. So thank you.
Here's my challenge for all of us. What does it mean to you to be part of a church community that fosters a social justice mindset, that gives you the opportunity to participate in service projects with the same people that you see on Sunday, to know that we weave social justice themes through our children's religious education programming? What is the value of that to you? These are the things that I think about each year when I consider what my pledge will be, and I hope that you will do the same.